A German shepherd ran into the hospital by himself with a bleeding girl on his back. Someone said, "Oh my God, is she alive?" The doctor stopped and stared. No one knew where he came from. There was no owner and no warning. His eyes were looking straight at the emergency room like he already knew where to go. Doctors and nurses ran toward them, but the dog growled to protect her and wouldn't let anyone get close. This dog wasn't attacking. He was asking for help. When a nurse finally reached toward the girl, the dog growled again. Not because he was angry, but because he was desperate, like he was saying, "Hurry, she doesn't have much time." One nurse said quietly, "What happened to her? Where are her parents?" No one knew. No one understood. Something terrible had happened to this child, and this dog was the only one who saw it. But no one could have imagined the truth that was about to come out. What happened next shocked everyone in the hospital. Before we start, make sure to hit like and subscribe. And really, I'm curious, where are you watching from? Write your country name in the comments. I love seeing how far our stories reach. The hospital lobby was busy like any normal weekday. Wheelchairs rolling, machines beeping, voices echoing off the shiny floors. At first, no one noticed the door open, but then a wave of silence spread across the room. A huge German shepherd limped inside. His fur was dirty, and he was breathing hard. On his back was a little girl, unconscious, her tiny arms hanging down. People stopped walking. A nurse dropped her clipboard. Conversations stopped immediately. No one could believe how a dog had carried a child straight into the emergency room. The dog didn't bark, didn't look around, didn't stop. He moved like he had a plan, as if he had walked these hallways 1,000 times. His eyes stayed locked on the trauma unit door, ignoring the surprised gasps behind him. A man in a wheelchair put his hand over his mouth. A receptionist whispered, "Is she alive?" A doctor stood frozen, trying to understand what he was seeing. The girl's hair was messy, her dress was torn, and her face was very pale. But the dog carried her so gently, each step careful and protective. Within seconds, everyone rushed into action. Nurses ran forward, their training kicking in. "Someone get a stretcher," one yelled. But when they got close, the dog growled softly. Not mean, just a warning. His body lowered to protect the girl. The staff stopped right away. The dog's eyes looked at anyone who came too close. It wasn't anger. It was fear. Fear that someone might hurt her again. The crowd looked at each other, confused. Who was this child? How long had she been hurt? And why was this dog acting like her guard? A security guard waited at the edge of the growing crowd. "Do we need to contain the animal?" he whispered to a doctor. But even he could tell this wasn't a normal situation. The dog's legs shook from being so tired. But he wouldn't let the girl fall from his back. A paramedic got down low and spoke softly, trying to calm him. The dog's ears moved, but he didn't back away. He just shifted to make sure the girl stayed balanced, not letting anyone touch her until he was sure they wouldn't hurt her. A few moments later, a young nurse named Emily stepped forward slowly with her hands up and her voice gentle. "It's okay, boy. We're here to help her." The dog's tight muscles relaxed a little, and his eyes softened at her voice. Emily reached out carefully, giving him time to decide. Finally, he lowered his head, a quiet sign that he trusted her. Emily lifted the unconscious girl into her arms, but the dog stayed close, refusing to let her out of his sight. No one in the hospital had ever seen anything like this. Emily held the unconscious girl tightly, feeling the child's weak, shallow breaths against her shoulder. But the moment she turned toward the emergency wing, the German shepherd moved forward, walking beside her, refusing to leave even one step of distance. Staff members moved aside, whispering in disbelief as the dog stayed right next to Emily. His tail was low, his ears were up, and his eyes watched every movement around them. Emily could tell this wasn't just loyalty. This was urgency. The dog wasn't just walking with her. He was guarding her and the girl. The hallway lights reflected off the shiny floors as Emily hurried toward the trauma room, her heart pounding. The dog matched her speed, moving protectively around her legs whenever someone got too close. A doctor rushed beside them, saying, "We need to examine her now. Let's move." But when he tried to take the girl from Emily's arms, the dog's head snapped up with a sharp, warning growl in his chest. The doctor pulled his hands back immediately, startled. It was clear the dog only trusted Emily. Inside the trauma room, machines beeped steadily as Emily placed the girl gently on the bed. The dog stood near the foot of the bed, stiff and watching every movement of the medical team. One nurse whispered, "Is he trained?" Another said quietly, "He's acting like he knows exactly what's happening." Emily walked over slowly and knelt beside him. She reached out her arm again, just like she did in the lobby. "You did the right thing bringing her here," she said softly. The dog's breathing calmed down as he recognized her voice. A male nurse came in with medical equipment, but the dog's low growl stopped him halfway across the room. Emily stood up immediately. "Wait," he's scared. "Let him know we're helping," she said. The nurse nodded, crouched down, and showed his hands. After a tense moment, the dog let him pass, though his eyes never looked away. His body language changed, less aggressive, more anxious. He wasn't trying to attack anyone. He was terrified of losing her. Minutes later, the doctor came back, speaking urgently to Emily. "We need to move her into imaging to check for internal injuries." The dog stepped forward immediately, blocking the door with his body. Emily knelt again, placing both her hands gently on his face. "She needs this." "Okay, I'll stay with her the entire time." The dog blinked slowly. Something in her voice calmed him. After a long pause, he stepped aside, though his paws shook from exhaustion. Even injured, even afraid, he followed as they wheeled the little girl away, determined not to leave her side. The trauma room filled immediately with movement. Doctors put on gloves, nurses adjusted monitors, and equipment beeped to life as Emily stayed by the girl's side. The German Shepherd planted himself at the foot of the bed like a silent guard, eyes watching every pair of hands that moved near the child. The lead doctor, Dr. Harris, leaned over the girl, checking her vital signs and frowning at the numbers. "She's severely dehydrated," he said. "Possible shock." Emily swallowed hard, brushing dirt from the girl's hair. Something about her injuries didn't look like an accident, and the dog's worried pacing confirmed it. As Dr. Harris lifted the girl's sleeve, the room went quiet. Dark bruises shaped like pressure marks ran across her forearm. Some old, some disturbingly fresh. A nurse whispered, "This wasn't a fall." The dog let out a low whine, nudging the side of the bed as if urging them to understand. The doctor checked her legs next. More bruising, small scratches, and rope-like marks around her wrists. Emily's chest tightened. "Someone tied her up?" she whispered. The medical team looked at each other with worried faces, realizing this child hadn't wandered into danger. She'd been trapped in it. Dr. Harris continued checking her, lifting the girl's torn dress slightly to look at her stomach. His face darkened immediately. "Everyone, prepare imaging and labs now. We need to know what we're dealing with." Emily held the girl's hand gently, noticing a faint tremor under her fingertips, proof she was fighting to hold on. The dog let out another soft whimper, stepping closer until his nose hovered beside the girl's arm. A nurse tried to give him space, but he wouldn't move. His whole body screamed protectiveness mixed with fear. The team carefully moved the girl onto a rolling bed for scans. As the bed rolled forward, the dog followed right away, tail low, breathing heavier than before. "Is he injured too?" someone asked. Emily looked down and noticed dried blood near his back leg. "He must have gotten hurt bringing her here," she said, her voice tight. A nurse tried to check him, but the dog snapped his head up defensively, making the nurse back away. Emily knelt in front of him. "Let us help you too." He blinked, torn between pain and duty, choosing the girl again. Before they could leave the trauma room, Dr. Harris stopped, staring at the little girl's chest as the monitor flickered. Her heart rhythm dropped dangerously low. "We're losing her." "Move now," he shouted. The room burst into action again. Emily pushed the bed faster while the dog hurried beside her, stumbling but refusing to stop. Staff shouted instructions. Doors swung open and alarms echoed through the hallway. The dog let out a distressed bark, the sound sharp and desperate. Whatever this child had been through, whatever danger she had escaped, they were now in a race against time to save her life. The hallway shook with urgency as staff rushed the girl toward the imaging wing. The German Shepherd kept pace beside the stretcher, limping but refusing to fall behind. His breaths were rough now, each inhale sharp, each exhale trembling. Emily noticed the way his back leg dragged slightly, leaving faint streaks on the shiny floor. "He's hurt worse than we thought," she said quietly. But still he pushed forward, eyes locked on the girl, as if his presence alone kept her alive. Determination held him up even as his strength quickly faded. They reached the imaging room doors where only medical staff were allowed beyond. As the team rolled the girl inside, the dog tried to follow, but a nurse gently blocked his path. He let out a sad whine, pawed at the door, and pressed his head against it. Emily knelt beside him, placing a calming hand on his chest. "They'll help her," she whispered. But his body shook uncontrollably, torn between trust and fear, loyalty and pain. When Emily stepped away to help the doctors, the dog staggered sideways. His legs buckled for a moment before he caught himself, but it was clear his strength was slipping. A couple in the waiting area watched him with concern. "That dog carried her in here," a man whispered. "How far could he have come like that?" Another worker came over to check on him, but the dog lifted his head weakly, making a tired warning growl. Not out of aggression, out of desperation. He still believed he needed to protect the girl. Seconds later, his strength finally gave out. With a soft, heartbreaking thud, the dog collapsed onto the tile floor. His chest rose and fell rapidly, his body heaving with exhaustion. Emily rushed back, dropping to her knees beside him. Hey, stay with me," she begged, running her hand along his fur. Beneath the dirt and dry blood, she felt heat. Too much heat. His muscles twitched from working too hard. His heart pounded wildly. This dog hadn't just been running. He had been carrying the girl for miles. A paramedic knelt beside Emily, checking the dog's condition. "He's severely dehydrated. He needs fluids and treatment now." Emily nodded urgently. "But he won't let anyone near him unless he trusts them." She looked into the dog's tired, glassy eyes. "Let us help. You've done everything you could." Something softened in his gaze, exhausted recognition. Slowly, painfully, his head lowered onto the floor. He didn't fight as they lifted him onto a stretcher. Even unconscious, his face stayed pointed toward the imaging room door, still trying to watch over the little girl he had fought so hard to save. Inside the imaging room, the medical team moved with fierce urgency. Machines hummed to life as the girl's fragile body was positioned carefully under the scanner. Emily stood beside her, holding her small hand, feeling how cold it had become. "Stay with us, sweetheart," she whispered. Dr. Harris watched the screens, his face tight with concern. Shadows and problems appeared immediately. There's swelling, internal bleeding, possible damage to her stomach. Emily's heart sank. The girl wasn't just injured. She was getting worse fast. Outside, faint barking echoed from the hall, the dog fighting to stay awake even in his weakened state. Minutes felt like hours. The scan ended and the team rushed the girl to a prepared emergency bay. Emily stayed close, refusing to let go. The dog, still on his own stretcher, lifted his head weakly as she passed. His eyes softened, a faint spark of recognition flickering through the pain. "She's fighting," Emily said quietly, brushing her fingertips against his cheek. The dog's ears twitched, as if reminding her he already knew. He had carried that hope on his back all the way to safety. In the emergency bay, nurses put in 4 lines and watched her unstable vital signs. Dr. Harris gave quick instructions: blood transfusion, warming blankets, airway support. A nurse checked the rope marks on her wrists again, shaking her head. "Someone caused this," she whispered. Emily felt a lump rise in her throat. She smoothed the girl's hair gently, her voice barely heard. "You're safe now. We'll protect you." The girl didn't respond. Only her chest moved slightly, each breath shallow and fragile, like she was clinging to life with the last threads of strength. Outside the room, a group of doctors discussed the scan results. Emily listened anxiously as Dr. Harris explained, "There's internal rupturing, likely from being hit hard. She needs surgery fast." Another doctor asked, "Is she stable enough?" Dr. Harris paused. "Barely, but without intervention, she won't make it." Emily closed her eyes, letting the weight of his words settle. She looked back at the girl, so small, so worn, yet somehow still fighting. It made Emily's resolve harden. She stepped forward. We need to move now. The dog brought her here for a reason. We can't fail them. The team wheeled the girl toward the surgical wing, alarms sounding as her vitals dropped again. Emily walked beside her, keeping a hand over the girl's, steady and reassuring. As they passed the dog's stretcher, he tried to lift himself again, whining softly. Emily touched his paw. We're taking her to surgery. She's not alone. His body relaxed, trusting her completely. The doors to the operating room swung open. Emily took a deep breath, stepped inside with the team, and whispered one final promise to the unconscious girl. We'll save you. While surgeons worked behind closed doors, the hospital hallway filled with tension. Two security guards walked up to the stretcher holding the weakened German Shepherd. We need to move the dog to a separate room, one guard said. This is still a restricted area. The other nodded, stepping closer with careful hands. But the moment they touched the stretcher, the dog's eyes snapped open. A deep warning growl came from his chest. Despite his exhaustion, he pushed himself halfway up, refusing to be taken anywhere away from the girl's surgical room. The guards looked at each other uneasily. He's injured, one said. He needs medical attention too. But the dog's growl grew deeper, echoing down the hallway. Emily rushed out from the surgical wing after hearing the noise. Stop, she called, placing herself between the guards and the stretcher. He's terrified. Don't force him. The guards lowered their hands, watching as the dog tried to stand. Even though his legs shook badly under his weight, he wasn't acting mean. He was acting on instinct, refusing to be separated. Emily knelt beside him again, gently placing her hand on his shoulder. She's still in surgery, she whispered. The dog's breathing turned fast and anxious, his gaze moving toward the door officials had closed behind Emily moments earlier. Suddenly, his ears moved. His posture changed sharply. He turned his head toward the far end of the hallway, staring hard. Emily followed his eyes, confused. What is it? She said quietly. The dog let out a short, sharp bark, a different sound from before. Not fear, not anger. A warning. The guard straightened. Should we check it out? One asked. Emily nodded. Something's got his attention, and he hasn't been wrong once. The dog barked again, louder this time, and tried to jump from the stretcher. His body failed him. He collapsed back, whining in frustration. Emily placed a calming hand on his head. We'll see what you're trying to tell us, she said softly. She motioned for one of the guards to walk with her toward the direction the dog had pointed. The hallway suddenly felt colder, quieter, tense. As they turned the corner, the hum of hospital equipment faded under an eerie silence. A supply door sat slightly open, though it was supposed to stay locked. Emily frowned. This wasn't open earlier. The guard pushed it wider, revealing scattered items, a tipped cart, a fallen box, a dropped key ring. Emily's pulse quickened. Someone had been here recently. She looked back toward the dog, who barked again, louder, urging them on. Whatever had happened to the girl, whatever danger she had escaped, it seemed the threat wasn't as far away as they thought. Emily rushed back toward the dog, her heartbeat pounding louder with every step. The guards followed close behind, still unsettled by what they had found in the storage hallway. The German Shepherd, though weak and barely awake minutes ago, lifted his head the moment Emily came back. His ears perked up, nostrils flaring as if he were searching for a scent only he could smell. Struggling, he tried once more to get to his feet. Easy, easy, Emily whispered, worried he might collapse again. But he wasn't listening. His instincts were firing up again, pushing through every bit of pain. With trembling determination, the dog slid off the stretcher, landing unsteadily on the tile floor. His legs shook, but he forced himself upright, eyes locked in the same direction he had barked earlier. Emily stepped beside him, confused. Do you smell something? Someone. The dog took a shaky step forward, then another, following a scent trail only he understood. The guards looked at each other, one saying, "This dog just woke from near collapse, and he's tracking." Emily nodded tightly. "Whatever he's sensing, we need to follow him." The dog limped down the hallway, every step painful, yet every movement on purpose. His nose hovered close to the floor, then lifted toward the air vents, tracing an invisible path. He led them past waiting rooms, past vending machines, past surprised patients who stared as the weakened but determined dog pushed forward like a soldier on one final mission. At one intersection, he stopped, sniffed deeply, and growled. The sound was low, dangerous, and filled with recognition. Emily's breath caught. He knows the scent. He smelled it before. The dog suddenly turned left, dragging himself toward the emergency exit at the far end of the hallway. The guards rushed ahead and pushed the door open. Immediately, cold air rushed inside. The dog limped out into the dimly lit back area behind the hospital, his breathing heavy, but his eyes sharp. Just a few meters away, near a patch of unmowed grass, lay something partially hidden under leaves. The dog hobbled toward it, nose touching the ground. Emily crouched beside him and froze. It was a piece of rope, identical to the marks around the girl's wrists. Beside the rope lay footprints, small, frantic ones leading toward the hospital, and larger ones trailing away into the trees. Emily's heart pounded. She escaped, and he followed her, she whispered. One guard knelt to check the ground. Whoever did this, they were here recently. The dog sniffed the rope, then barked sharply, turning toward the dark forest beyond the hospital fence. His stance shifted again, no longer weak, no longer desperate. Focused, driven. Emily swallowed hard. The message was clear. The dog wasn't just leading them to evidence. He was leading them to the person who had hurt the girl. The dog stepped closer to the forest edge, nose twitching as he breathed in deeply. His fur stood up, a low growl coming from his chest. Emily felt a chill crawl up her spine. The guards moved their flashlights toward the thick brush, showing trampled grass and broken twigs scattered in a messy trail. Someone ran through here, one guard said. The dog moved forward, limping but determined, until he stopped beside a patch of disturbed soil. Emily crouched down, brushing away leaves, and froze. Stuck in the dirt was a scrap of red fabric, torn badly, its threads tangled with dried mud. One guard lifted the fabric piece carefully. This looks like it was yanked off during a struggle. Emily's breath caught. It matched the color of the girl's torn dress. The dog sniffed the fabric hard, then barked once, sharp and certain, before pulling forward again. They followed him deeper into the clearing. The further they stepped, the quieter the world became. No wind, no rustling, no insects. Just an eerie stillness, as if the forest itself remembered something terrible. A few steps later, the dog stopped again, digging frantically at the ground despite his injured leg. Emily knelt beside him, pushing aside branches until her fingers brushed something cold. It was metal, smooth, bent, partially buried. She lifted it slowly, squinting through the dim light. It's a flashlight, she whispered, broken and covered in mud. A guard looked at it under his beam. This isn't from the hospital. Someone dropped it during the chase. The dog barked again, louder this time, shifting toward a nearby tree trunk. Emily followed his gaze and felt her stomach twist. Ropes hung loosely from a thick branch, frayed, ends dangling, matching the ones found earlier. They walked over carefully. Under the branch were signs of a struggle, deep shoe prints, claw marks in the dirt, and disturbed leaves circling the area. The guard let out a sharp breath. This is where she was kept. Emily's heart pounded in her ears. He must have found her here, she whispered, looking at the exhausted dog beside her. He freed her and carried her all the way to the hospital. As if responding, the dog nudged her hand gently, then lifted his head toward a second trail leading deeper into the woods. Fresh footprints, heavy, angled, hurried, disappeared into darkness. The guards looked at each other with tense faces. Whoever did this didn't leave willingly, one said quietly. They ran. Emily tightened her jaw. And they're still out there. The dog stepped toward the footprint trail again, trying to follow it despite his shaking legs. Emily placed a hand on his back. Not now, she said softly. You've done enough. But the dog whined, eyes pleading as if begging them to keep going. The guards looked at each other before one lifted his radio. Dispatch, we need a search team in the forest immediately. Possible location of suspect. And as the forest lights flickered on, the truth hit everyone. This wasn't just evidence. This was the beginning of the hunt. Back at the hospital, the dog was returned to his stretcher. Though he refused to lie down until Emily gently guided him, his chest rose with uneven breaths. Exhaustion was finally starting to take over. A veterinarian on staff arrived, kneeling beside him with careful hands. "Let's check his chip," she said quietly. Emily stroked the dog's head reassuringly as the scanner beeped softly. Seconds later, the vet's face changed from concentration to shock. This isn't just any dog. He's registered as K9 Valor, a retired police dog reported missing 3 weeks ago. Emily's breath caught. Missing? What happened to him? The vet pulled up the report. It says he disappeared during a search operation. They thought he ran away or was injured and lost. Emily looked at the dog with new understanding. He didn't run away. He was searching. Valor lifted his head weakly, leaning into her touch. His eyes held a depth of exhaustion and loyalty so strong it was heartbreaking. This wasn't a random hero. This was a police dog still doing his duty long after retirement. One of the guards stepped closer. If he was missing all this time, then he must have been out there when he found the girl. Emily nodded slowly. He stayed with her, she whispered. Protected her, fought for her, and carried her here. The realization washed over everyone around them. Valor hadn't brought the girl because he found her by chance. He had chosen her. He had refused to leave her side, even when injured, starving, or exhausted enough to collapse. His mission had changed from serving the department to saving one small life. The vet listened to Valor's heartbeat, shaking her head softly. He's severely dehydrated. Multiple muscle tears, possible fractures. This level of damage. He shouldn't have been able to walk, let alone carry a child. Emily's eyes stung. But he did. The dog's ears twitched as if he recognized her voice. His gaze moved again toward the surgical wing where the girl fought for her life. Even hurt, even trembling, he tried to push himself up again. Emily pressed gently against his shoulders. Rest, please. She's safe now. But Valor didn't relax. Not truly. His eyes stayed fixed on the surgery doors, waiting for the girl he'd carried out of the forest. The vet sighed softly. His loyalty is extraordinary. A guard added, this dog didn't just save her. He refused to give up. Emily brushed her hand over his fur, voice barely above a whisper. You're her protector, and you didn't fail. Valor blinked slowly, leaning in her touch, his body finally giving in to the weight of exhaustion. Yet even as his eyes closed, his ears stayed turned toward the surgery room, still listening for the child he had nearly died to save. The forest was alive with sounds of night. Everything changed. Wind rustled through the branches, owls called from far away, and leaves crunched under small, frantic footsteps. The little girl stumbled through the darkness. Her wrists were raw from the rope she had finally slipped out of. She didn't know where she was going, only that she had to get away. But she had no light, no strength, and no one to protect her. Her breath came out in sharp, trembling gasps. Behind her, branches snapped. Someone was following. Her heart pounded louder than the forest itself. She tripped over a root and fell hard, scraping her knees. Pain shot through her legs, but she pushed herself up again, desperate. A faint beam of moonlight caught the red fabric of her torn dress. She pressed a hand against her bruised ribs, whimpering softly. The forest terrified her. Every shadow felt like danger. Every sound felt like a threat. She stumbled deeper into the darkness, not knowing that a pair of glowing eyes was watching her from the trees, not hunting her, protecting her. K9 Valor had been following her for miles. Valor had escaped a trap earlier that day. His leash was cut, his uniform torn, his mission incomplete. He had lost his original team, but his instincts wouldn't let him stop searching. When he heard a child's faint cry, he followed the sound without stopping. Each whimper drew him closer until he found her on the forest floor, shaking with fear. He walked over slowly, carefully, lowering his head so she wouldn't be afraid. The girl looked up, eyes wide, then collapsed in his fur, sobbing. The dog pressed against her gently, understanding everything without a single word. Moments later, a twig snapped again, the same footsteps returning. The girl went stiff with terror, clutching Valor's neck. Valor's body tensed immediately. He placed himself between the girl and the direction of the coming danger. A shadowy figure moved between the trees, searching, muttering angrily. Valor growled, low, deep, unmistakable. The figure froze, realizing he was no longer alone with a defenseless child. When the man stepped closer, Valor leaped forward with a powerful bark that echoed through the forest. The man cursed, stumbling back, tripping over roots before running away into the darkness. Once the threat was gone, Valor returned to the girl, nudging her gently. She cried into his fur again, whispering, "Please don't leave me." Valor didn't hesitate. He pressed his side against her, encouraging her to climb onto his back. She was too weak to walk. Every part of her body shook with exhaustion. With trembling hands, she wrapped her arms around his neck. Valor steadied himself, feeling her weight settle. He took his first step, slow, careful, protective, beginning the long journey towards safety. The forest stretched endlessly before them, but he refused to stop. Hour after hour, Valor carried her through thick bushes, steep hills, and cold streams. His muscles trembled. His legs sometimes buckled, but he pushed on. Whenever the girl slipped, he stopped, adjusting himself so she wouldn't fall. When she whimpered in pain, he licked her hand comfortingly. At one point, she whispered, "Thank you. Please don't let me die." And Valor responded the only way he could, by moving forward, step after brutal step, his determination stronger than the weight crushing his body. Just before dawn, he saw lights in the distance, the hospital. With the last of his strength, he headed straight toward it. The surgery lights dimmed, and the tension that had filled the hall slowly eased as the operating room door swung open. Dr. Harris stepped out, pulling his mask down, exhaustion heavy on his face. Emily stood immediately, her heart pounding. "Is she?" she whispered. The doctor nodded. She made it through the operation. She's stable for now, but very weak. Relief washed over Emily, nearly making her knees buckle. She rushed inside with permission, finding the small girl resting under warm blankets, monitors beeping gently around her. The room felt fragile, quiet, hopeful. Emily moved closer, brushing a strand of hair from the child's forehead. Her skin was still pale, but her breathing was steadier. "You're safe now," Emily whispered, her voice trembling. Minutes passed before the girl's eyelids fluttered. Slowly, her eyes opened, confused, frightened, searching. Emily immediately leaned in. "It's okay, sweetheart. You're in the hospital. You're safe." The girl blinked slowly, trying to understand. Her lips opened, dry and trembling, and for a moment Emily feared she couldn't speak. Then, barely heard, the girl breathed a single word. "Valor." Emily froze. Shock ran through her chest. The girl's eyes filled with tears, small shoulders trembling under the blanket. She tried to sit up, but her body was too weak. Emily gently held her down. "He's here," she said softly. "He's safe. He brought you to us." The girl's face relaxed, a faint smile forming despite the pain. "He didn't leave me," she whispered. Emily swallowed hard. "No, he didn't." The child squeezed Emily's fingers, holding on to the reassurance. "I want to see him," she said quietly, her voice cracking with longing. Emily hesitated. The dog was still recovering, hooked to 4 fluids and barely awake. But she saw the fear in the girl's eyes, the desperate need for the only one she trusted. "Let me check on him," Emily promised. The girl nodded weakly, eyes closing again from exhaustion. As Emily stepped out of the room, she found nurses gathered near Valor's stretcher. He was awake now, though barely lifting his head any time a door opened. His ears perked when he sensed Emily coming. Despite the pain, he tried to stand again. Emily knelt beside him, tears finally slipping free. "She's awake," she whispered. Valor's tail thumped weakly against the mattress. "She asked for you." The dog forced himself onto his elbows, trembling badly with effort. Emily shook her head. No, no, don't move. I'll bring her. Valor's eyes softened, but he refused to lie back down until Emily gently pressed a hand to his chest. I promise, she whispered. You'll see her. Only then did he relax, breathing out shakily. Emily stood, looking between the two rooms. One child fighting for strength, one dog fighting through pain, all bound by a loyalty deeper than words. Detectives arrived at the hospital before sunrise, called by the evidence found in the forest and the girl's condition. Emily guided them toward the back entrance where the rope, footprints, and broken flashlight had been found. Search teams were already searching through the woods when one detective walked up to Emily. The footprints leading away from the clearing were fresh, he said. Whoever did this didn't get far. The dog, Valor, perked his ears at the detective's tone, recognizing the change in atmosphere. Even injured, he stayed alert, sensing the urgency hanging thick in the air. In the forest, officers followed the heavy footprints through thick bushes until they reached a crude campsite hidden behind fallen logs. Torn fabric scraps, discarded food wrappers, and a half-burned jacket lay scattered across the ground. One officer lifted the jacket, showing a name stitched inside, evidence left behind in the suspect's panic. He left in a hurry, the lead detective said. He knew Valor was on his trail. Moments later, the K-9 unit arrived with their dogs, joining the search. The officers exchanged determined nods. The hunt had officially begun. The trail led deeper into the woods until officers found a narrow path cut through tall brush. At the end of it sat a small abandoned shed, its door hanging crooked. Inside, footprints covered the dust-filled floor and a single lantern lay shattered. Then they found something chilling, a cell phone, cracked but still working. An officer scrolled through its recent messages, eyes widening. He planned to move her again, he said, tonight, before anyone found her. The officers didn't need more motivation. With the evidence secured, they expanded the search area, determined to catch the man before he fled. Back at the hospital, Emily updated Valor about the unfolding investigation as if he understood every word. And in many ways, he did. His ears twitched at the sound of police radios crackling nearby. Suddenly, a voice sounded through a detective's walkie-talkie. Suspect located. Repeat, suspect located. Attempting to flee on foot. Valor immediately tried to rise, legs shaking under him. He let out a sharp bark, eyes burning with the instinct to finish what he started. Emily pressed her hands against his shoulders, holding him steady. You've done enough, she whispered, though she knew he wanted to protect the girl until the end. Minutes later, officers radioed the final update. Suspect in custody. Repeat, suspect is in custody. Relief washed through the hospital hallway. Emily let out a shaky breath, tears stinging her eyes. Valor's body finally relaxed, as if his mission was truly complete. The detective walked up to Emily with gratitude in his voice. Your dog saved her life and helped us catch the person responsible. Emily looked at Valor, who watched the surgical room door with tired devotion. He's not my dog, she whispered. He's hers. And as the officers carried the criminal away, one truth became clear. Valor hadn't just rescued the girl. He had delivered justice. The quiet beeping of the monitors filled the recovery room as the little girl slowly drifted back into consciousness. Her eyelashes fluttered and she turned her head slightly, wincing from the soreness in her neck. Emily was already at her bedside, offering a reassuring smile. You're safe, she whispered gently. The girl blinked, tried to remember where she was. Her gaze wandered around the room. White walls, soft lights, blankets tucked neatly around her. But something was missing. Her breathing quickened. Where's Valor? She whispered, voice trembling. Emily leaned closer, brushing her thumb gently across the girl's hand. He's here at the hospital, she said. He's resting. The girl shook her head weakly, tears pooling at the corners of her eyes. I need him, she said quietly. He stayed with me. He didn't let them take me. Her voice cracked, panic threatening to rise again. Emily squeezed her hand firmly. It's okay, sweetheart. He's not far. He's safe, and he's been waiting. The girl's trembling eased slightly, but her eyes stayed filled with longing. She tried sitting up, but the pain made her gasp, and Emily gently supported her. "Easy," Emily said softly. "You've been through so much." The girl looked up at her, voice barely heard. Can I see him? Please." The plea wasn't dramatic. It was raw, fragile, and honest. Emily felt her heart twist. This wasn't a simple request. It was the one thing keeping the girl grounded to safety and hope. Emily nodded slowly. "I'll bring him," she promised. "But you must stay still. Let her body heal." The girl nodded weakly, settling back against the pillows. Her small fingers held on to Emily's hand as if afraid she might disappear. "He saved me," she whispered. "I was so scared, and he never left." Emily brushed a hand through her hair, voice softening even more. "He didn't leave you for a second," she said quietly. "Even when he was hurt, he kept going." The girl closed her eyes, breathing shakily. "I didn't think anyone would find me," she whispered, "but he did." Valor came. Each word carried the weight of everything she had been through. Emily felt tears sting her eyes, but held them back. She leaned close and kissed the girl's forehead gently. "I'll bring him," she promised again. The girl's fingers loosened slightly, trusting her. Emily stood and stepped out of the room, letting out a shaky breath. Down the hall, Valor lay on his stretcher, eyes half open. But the moment he heard the door creak, he lifted his head. Emily smiled through the emotion tightening her chest. "She's asking for you," she whispered. Valor tried to rise despite his injuries, and Emily realized nothing in the world could keep them apart now. Emily slowly wheeled Valor's stretcher down the quiet hospital hallway, her hands steady, but her heart racing. The German shepherd, though weak, lifted his head every few seconds, eyes focused ahead as if he already sensed where he was going. "Easy boy," Emily whispered. "Almost there." His ears twitched at the sound of the little girl's monitor beeping faintly from the room ahead. Despite 4 lines and bandages wrapped around his leg, Valor tried again to push himself upright. Emily gently guided him back down. "She's waiting for you," she said quietly. When the stretcher entered the doorway, the girl's eyes opened immediately, as if her heart recognized his presence before her mind did. Her breath caught, and tears filled her eyes. "Valor," she whispered, reaching out a trembling hand. Valor responded with a low, emotional whimper, lifting himself despite the pain. Emily quickly supported him, helping him rise just enough to place his paws gently at the edge of the bed. The girl let out a tiny sob of relief, brushing her fingers through his fur with shaking hands. The moment Valor felt her touch, his entire body softened. His tail thumped weakly against the stretcher, every bit of tension melting into affection. The girl leaned forward, resting her forehead against his, whispering words no one else could hear. Emily stepped back, giving them space, tears quietly blurring her own vision. Nurses who had gathered at the door watched silently, moved by the bond between the wounded child and the dog who had refused to abandon her even when his own life was at risk. The girl stroked his cheek with fragile fingertips. "You came back," she whispered. Valor nudged her gently, pressing his nose into her palm. Emily swallowed hard. "He never left you," she said softly. "He followed you through the forest, protected you, carried you, and then brought you to us." The girl nodded, tears sliding down her cheeks. "I wasn't scared when he was there," she said quietly. "Even when everything hurt, he stayed with me." Her voice cracked, and Valor responded with another soft whine, pressing closer. Emily walked over slowly, placing a comforting hand on the girl's shoulder. "He's safe now, and so are you." The girl leaned back against her pillows, keeping one hand on Valor's head. "Can he stay?" she asked, fear flickering again. Emily smiled warmly. "He's not going anywhere." Valor rested beside her bed, eyes finally closing, not out of exhaustion alone, but out of peace. For the first time since entering the forest, he felt the mission was complete, and the girl, with her tiny hand holding his fur, finally felt safe enough to fall asleep. Morning sunlight spilled gently through the hospital windows as Dr. Harris stepped into the room, his face soft and warm. The girl was still sleeping peacefully, her hand resting on Valor's fur. The dog slept too, chest rising steadily, finally free from fear. Emily stood at the foot of the bed, watching them with a mix of relief and awe. They made it, the doctor said quietly. Emily nodded, tears gathering. Because he wouldn't give up. The doctor stepped closer, looking at the girl's chart. It's a miracle she survived, and an even greater miracle that he did. Later that morning, hospital staff gathered outside the room as police officers arrived with official statements. One officer stepped forward, speaking to the small group. K9 Valor didn't just save her life, he said. He gave us the trail we needed to find the suspect. Without him, this case would still be open. Emily felt pride swell in her chest. The little girl stirred awake, blinking at the officers. Valor lifted his head too, sensing the shift in energy. Emily leaned in. They're here because of you both, she whispered. The officer walked up to the bed, kneeling beside the girl with a gentle smile. You're very brave, he said softly. The girl shook her head, touching Valor's ear. He's the brave one, she whispered. Valor nudged her hand, almost as if embarrassed by the attention. The officer chuckled. Well, we agree. He reached into his pocket and pulled out a small silver badge charm. This is for him, he said, clipping it gently to Valor's collar. For extraordinary bravery. Emily's eyes filled immediately. The girl's smile trembled with emotion as she whispered, My hero. News soon spread throughout the hospital. Staff, patients, even visitors gathered near the hallway to catch a glimpse of the legendary dog who had carried a wounded child through the forest to safety. Nurses brought treats. Children drew pictures of Valor, and adults quietly wiped their eyes. Emily watched as the little girl sat up with help, her hand never leaving Valor's fur. What happens now? She asked timidly. Emily crouched beside her. Now you heal, she said gently, and he heals with you. The girl nodded, leaning into the dog who had saved her life. That evening, as the sun dipped low, casting warm golden light across the room, the girl whispered something to Emily. Can he stay with me? Valor lifted his head, looking between them. Emily smiled softly. I think he already decided that. And just before the video ended, a message appeared on the screen. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Hit the bell icon so you never miss another amazing story of courage, loyalty, and hope. Valor rested his head gently on the girl's lap. Proof that sometimes heroes don't wear capes. They walk on four paws.